Hi there, Refine Preset community. Marta here. I'm here to edit a session for you guys. I'm actually doing a mini session. This is actually a small section of a larger shoot I did, but I tend to shoot in a lot of different areas when I shoot in one large area. And I focus on each area as like a mini session, so I get a lot out of that particular area. This was just a small patch of grass is where we started the session off. And it did lend a good variety from family portraits, individual portraits, portraits of each parent, and even the family pet was involved. So I went ahead and grabbed 20 images for you guys. I know many sessions can range between 10 to 20, 10 to 25, but I wanted to show you how quickly I can edit through these 20 images. Today I'm using Refine 1 preset. It is my go-to preset personally. It is what launched Refined as a company. It's what I personally developed for myself and decided to share it with everybody else. So I'm just going to go ahead for the first couple images, show you how I would kind of edit those and talk through a little longer on those, and then I'm actually just going to run through the session to show you guys how quickly you can edit this session and maybe show you a couple of time-saving techniques that I use when I'm editing to save myself from sitting at the computer for hours upon hours, because it's the whole reason that we all love presets, to get a particular look and to save us some time, especially when you're doing a bunch of sessions or weddings at once. So let's just go ahead and get started. Like I said, I am going to use Refine 1 today, so I'm going to go ahead and run the preset. I always run the first grain and soften for my clients, so I'm going to go ahead and save myself some time, and I'm going to sync these on all the images that I've selected that I plan to edit, and let me go ahead and unclick white balance and exposure because we don't want that. Everything else looks good. And I'm going to synchronize. So what that's done is that's added those three things all the way across the board on all the images, and that'll keep me from having to re-click each one as I go. So if you're just watching, I've now added Refine 1 preset, soften, and the first grain to all of the images. So then I will just go through, adjust white balance, exposure, and contrast, occasionally highlights and shadows if needed, and I probably won't touch anything else. So let's go ahead and edit this image, and I'll go ahead and put the side-by-side up so you can see how the image was before I ran for Refine 1, and this is with it. I'm going to lift exposure, but I'm going to not lift too much because I don't want to blow out this area. This was a quick shot. They were playing while I was in the middle of doing something. Turned around and they were playing with this ladybug. So I just shot it real quick and really didn't have time to adjust for it. So what I'm going to do is lift the shadows instead of the exposure so I'm not overdoing this highlight area. And try to bring the image up to where I want it. And let's go ahead and do a little highlight save. I'm going to actually bring that all the way down and see if I can get a little more out of the exposure as well. And it looks a little warm, so I'm just going to cool it down a little to my taste. And there you go. Next image. Again, Refine 1 is already on this image. You can see a slight difference here. I want to talk about the white balance, or the exposure on this real quick. Normally now, this was shot a little while ago, I would underexpose this a little more just to maintain a little more of these highlight areas, but I was shooting at, I was exposing for them instead of the entire image before. So the preset's so strong that you can underexpose this quite a bit and bring it up, and you'll see that in a later image of what I should have done for this image with the backlight, just like this one here. So you can underexpose a little bit for this. So let me just go ahead and edit. I'm going to go ahead and warm this up just a touch. And let's go ahead and put a highlight save so you can maintain some of these bright sunspots on them. And really, I didn't do much to this. I shoot at 4:3 in camera, as you can see here. So all I have to do really is just adjust my crop as I prefer. I do it in camera to save myself that step when in the end, and it's just how I see images when I'm shooting anyways. Again, presets already run. Lifting exposure and shadows to kind of balance out the exposure so I'm not blowing out these highlights. Highlight save. And let's warm it up just a touch. There we go. Same thing, presets already run. increase exposure. And I think I'm actually going to pull this one down just a smidge. There we go. Increase exposure. Again, because of the sunspots, I'm trying not to overdo the exposure. So I'm going to balance it with lifting the shadows a little. It's a nice way to kind of balance the two things out. And if you prefer a softer shadow, like you don't like a lot of contrast, this is a great adjuster. The way the preset's built, because I've got a tone curve built into the preset, it allows you just to use these to kind of basically strengthen and lessen the preset. Almost like how a profile would work, I guess, is how the new profiles are out. But this basically does a very similar thing as far as decreasing and increasing, but still holding the overall depth that the preset has. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and warm this up just a touch. I'm going to look for any chromatic aberration since I'm shooting pretty wide open. I believe this is shot at 1.6. We have a little bit in here. Chromatic aberration, for those that don't know, is these kind of fluorescent highlights that happen around your edges sometimes when shooting wide open. There's some blue in here. I'm a stickler for it. Learned that from being a stock photographer. They don't like it, so we usually have to get rid of it. So I've actually built in CA Correct and CA Correct Plus, and that sometimes we'll work on these particular ones. It usually works really well on the pink and the blue ones. Yeah, it looks like it fixed the blue, but it didn't fix this hot orange. So let me see if I can get some of that out here. And where you would go is you go into your lens corrections, manual, and let's see if I can get this kind of bright orange off of there. There it goes. And then it dipped up. Now it looks a little softer. It's the tiniest little thing, but it does help. Same thing, you can see it kind of lessened this pink in her hands, this highlight here in her hand, and there was some blue in her hair. That all got fixed. So I just usually go through and do that really fast as I'm editing. To me, it can make or break an image. Again, this is just with Refined 1. Nothing else is done. Not much else has to be done. I definitely want to warm it up a little because I like it a little warmer. And the shadows got a little dark in this area, so I'm going to lift that just a little. And then I'm going to pop the contrast a little. Now, if you like your images a little punchier, a little more contrast, a little closer to, say, a portrait, you can definitely pump it up a little more right here. You can see everything stays the same except for that contrast. So it's really your personal preferences on what you prefer there. And I'm trying not to overdo the exposure because, again, I lost a little bit of detail here and I don't want to lose too much. I'm going to highlight save, bring back as much of that as I can. And here we go. And it's going straight in. Maybe tuck it in a little. Let's look for chromatic. I think there's some of these plants. See, that's actually a pink plant. I think a little bit in here. You can see it on the edges here. There's probably some on the edge of Dad. Got a little bit of bluing. So let's go ahead and run this one and see if that helps us. It helped a little. Let's go right down here. First. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for that blue and make sure I'm adding the pink back in for the skin tone. Just got to find that color. It's one of those ones that's a little tricky because those ears get really hot sometimes. You kind of just have to find the happy medium. And they seem to help these too. There we go. All right. Whoa, sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay, next image. All right, so here's the before and after. This is straight out of camera. This is just with Refined 1. Go I'll make this bigger since it's a horizontal. I'm going to go ahead and warm it up a little. 5200 seems about where I'm liking these. So for me, it's easier just to type in sometimes. And just increasing exposure. Dial back the contrast just a hair. And it's really just kind of tweaking until you find this way since it's so there's before, after. Same thing. Before the preset, after. And again, I have grain, soften, and refine 1 on this. So I'm just lifting the exposure. I'm going to pop the contrast just a touch. And really that's all I would do. I could go in and spot treat this little piece of grass because they were playing in the field, so they ended up with little kind of grasses and seeds all over them. That is where I want that to come from. And same thing with chromatic aberration. You can see the hot pink in her highlights here. So I'm going to go ahead and do the first one and scroll down and see if I can get that to lessen up just a little bit. There we go. It's better. Takes a little bit of that edge off. Okay, next image. Okay, so here's before the preset, after the preset. Go ahead and adjust. I think it's going to be about time for me to invest in a new computer. It's been a couple years. And this one's acting a little slow today. Someone needs its coffee a little better. Increase shadows. Let's warm it up a bit. Not that much. And I'm actually going to take a smidge of the pink out, because I can see I'm seeing a little too much of a pink hue in them. If you have a lot of green color cast, adding the magenta back in really helps balance out the color cast, but you have to watch them getting too pink, so I decided I wanted to edit that out. Just take a little bit out, a little bit of contrast, and let's do highlight save, and move the shadows just a smidge. So here's the before, after, next image. Okay, so before with the preset, temperature, a little bit of contrast. I'm actually going to add a tiny bit of pink back into this one. So I'm just watching for the tones. Actually, that's a little too much. And so this is after, before. And again, this is Refine 1 preset. Let's go ahead and adjust our crop first. And this is again the before, and that's just with the preset run. I haven't done anything else but run the preset on this. And you can see if you have good exposure and white balance, you honestly don't, it's a one-click preset. So just depending on your lighting situation, this is backlit, so I exposed for them. Now I would actually underexpose it and just lift the exposure. But you can see that honestly I could just click the preset and move on because it was almost dead on. But I do want to warm this up a little because I am liking it just a smidge warmer because of where the sun glow is. I'll go ahead and do a little bit of contrast and move on. And crop. this one a little tighter. This one has a lot of haze to it, and you can see here's the before. Hit the preset, and if I'm going to do this in color, I would just lift this up, give it a little contrast to fight the haze, maybe add in a little pink. She's looking a little green here, that much pink. There you go. But I also wanted to show you guys this one in black and white. So I like black and white soft. I like to add grain grit to it. I'm going to actually pull this back down and pop the contrast a little more. And I'm actually going to pop it in a little tighter so you can really get intimate with on there. There you go. Now this next one is probably closer to how I would, here let me do it before, how I would expose these images now to maintain as much of this back here that I can and any highlights that we have. So this is about the exposure I tend to go for. Again, I shot pretty wide open at 1.6 and obviously underexposed a little for this area. That way I could just bring it back up in post. Preset is already run. And let me go ahead and warm it up because we know we're going to do that. And then I'm just going to lift exposure to where I want it. And if I like it punchier, I can just pump up this contrast a little. Personally, don't like that. And if I felt like I had any dark areas, I could lift the shadows as needed. I'm going to actually warm this one up. Just, I think because she's in the shadows, it got a little cooler, so I'm going to add another 100 on that. So before, after, that's all I did, nice and quick. And this cute family picture with Dad. Here's before, straight on camera, with the preset. Again, due to the way I shot in the backlighting, I'm not going to do too much exposure, just a smidge, and see if we can lift more of it from the shadows. And warm it up. And this is still going slower because I am talking through it. I said I wasn't, but I can't just sit here and just edit mindlessly for you guys. I think if you learn a little more if I explain things. I'm going to do highlight save and go ahead and pull the highlights all the way back just so this isn't so stark in this area. Check for chromatic. We have a little bit of pink here, a little bit of blue here. See the blue all along her hairline. So let's go ahead, and that actually worked on the pink really well. Looks like we need to touch up the blue. And you just basically have to find the tone on this end that is picking up. There it goes, and that's gone. Got to keep an eye out for things like this. So you can see his teeth kind of went there because there's obviously pinks in here. So you have to find the best of both worlds with this. You don't want to pull it all back because then his teeth look funky. There we go. That looks a little better. And let's check everybody else. Everybody looks pretty good. And so that just takes that hard edge off of her hair there. And before, after, next image, almost done. Okay, so I'll just scroll back up. Before the preset, straight to the camera with the preset, and I'm going to just lift the shadows here. I'm going to go ahead and run the chromatic aberration because I could see it from all the way back here in her hair, and that already helped it quite a bit. I'm going to give them a little bit of contrast here, and of course our warm up. Without the preset and edited. Seeing a little bit of green cast, so I'm just going to pop in probably +2 on this. And move on to the family dog. He was a puppy, believe it or not, full size, but very, very young and very, very rambunctious. Actually, I had a really fun time photographing him. And this is exactly how I would prefer to expose the other images. So this is how I expose now. Here, straight out of camera, and you can see why the highlights are just not as bright. You know, we're not as blown out. The sky is not white. We actually have a little bit of color still left in it, even though it was shot at 2.5. I did that because he was moving constantly, and I tried to give myself a little more wiggle room. And then, so now I can actually push the exposure a little more, and because it's backlit, I am going to lift the shadows, and then his white balance actually looks really good. And again, personal preference on how bright you go with this, or how much you pump the contrast. Actually, I want to do a little less there. And before, after. Okay, here straight out of camera. Again, probably, in my opinion, overexpose this a little bit too much now. It makes the leaves hot, it makes the whites hot, and I prefer to underexpose. I just think it gives you a better edit. But this is what I have here, and we'll just fix it in post. That's the beauty of shooting in RAW, is you can kind of correct a few things. So let's go ahead and bring the, I'm actually going to bring the exposure down to try to save a little bit of this. Not that much, come on computer. And I'm going to do highlight save to save a little more. And I'm going to lift the shadows. And we're going to warm it up. Quick before. And watch this area here. When I do the after, you can see how much we got back. You see the difference? That's how much I lost just by shooting a little too wide open. And that's why I'm talking about shooting a little, I mean, not too wide open, but too overexposed. I basically expose for them, which is proper. That's what a lot of people do. That's actually how I shoot film. But with digital, you kind of have to lean the other way, which is shoot a little more underexposed. And, you know, I gain all of this data back here, and it actually looks to be a softer image, a little less stark. And we like a little more. I'm going to go ahead and run this. I can see the blue in his hair. And I'm going to run the first one because I watched his lips disappear. There we go. And let's go fix the blue in his hair. And I'm looking at this line there, and there it goes, just like that. And that's gone. And that gives us a nice softer edge here. Let's see if I can, I don't know if you can notice it from back there or not, probably not. Let's see here. Okay, then. Straight out of camera. And then with the preset. Let's go ahead and warm this up. And lift. Let's do highlight save. I'm going to pull all the way back to try to keep some of this data. Again, should have underexposed this just a little bit to save that data there. Still looks really good. Soften helps take a little bit of that edge off. I'm going to go ahead and run CA because I can see it in this hair here. Perfect. And before, after. And again, your personal preferences on how much contrast, you know, depth. I like a softer image. I tend to shoot Fuji 400 and medium format, and to me it just lends a little bit of a softer image, so I like to edit. My digital's the same. Here is the before, after. You really don't have to do much this image. Let's go ahead and do highlight save. And let's go ahead and lift just a smidge. And get a better crop for the portrait. Sorry, click something there. I lost my image. There we go. So there's before and after. And one more portrait. And this one actually ended up really warm. Don't know what my Canon was thinking because I shoot auto white balance. So let's bring this down to our 5200. And here's the before straight out of camera, just with the preset run. And just go ahead and do highlight save. From the shadows. Just try not to lose too much of this. I'm going to go ahead and pull this all the way back, see if we can save a little So you can see how stark that was straight out of camera, and that softens it up quite a bit. But had I underexposed it just a little more, I would have maintained a little more of this data in camera, would have been easier to save more, and get us a better, softer edge here. Or just turn him so that's not hitting his face, but we're moving quickly. I actually kind of like it because I think it looks a little more authentic. And there you go. And that is all of the images. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, and you'd like to see more of these videos, please comment below. If you have any questions, comment below. I answer all questions. And make sure to hit that little red subscribe button because we are doing lots of videos and we hope to do a lot more. We're shooting for weekly. We had some family stuff and spring break happen the last couple weeks, so we missed a couple weeks, but should be back on track with this. And thank you for watching our video, and we hope you enjoy your refined presets.